Armen Keteyian, welcome to the Seth Davis Show. It's great to see you over my Skype connection here, and great to be with you, and great to be holding up this book. It's called The System. It is now officially a New York Times bestseller, The Glory and Scandal of Big-Time College Football, written by yourself as well as my Sports Illustrated colleague, Jeff Benedict. Armen, I know that this book grew out of a project that you did for Sports Illustrated and for CBS News about investigating criminal records of all of the major college football programs. Explain to me what you learned during that project that made you think that there was a bigger story, a bigger book to write here about college football.
Well, Jeff and I had spent I think we were working on this project for about 6 months. And one of the things we discovered right off the bat, we took the SI top 25 preseason football poll, and it turned out only one school, Texas Christian University, TCU, did any sort of criminal background checks on their recruits before they went out and offered them college scholarships, which we found, pretty surprising given the fact that, these are $100,000 to $200,000 items per year or over the course of 4 years. So that kind of opened our eyes to some things. And then we did another collaboration on gangs and sports. But really, Seth, the turning point for me was I had been working on a 60 Minutes piece on sort of the state of college football and how it had become the front porch or the welcome mat for many universities, and discovering the fact that only 22 of the 120 BCS schools back in 2010 and 11 were actually making money, and started to make some friends at the University of Michigan. I got to spend time at Alabama with Nick Saban. And as you know, that was the time in college football where they were 2010 and 11, major meltdown, probably the most convulsive period in the history of the NCAA college football, abandoning rivalries, chasing television dollars, regional TV dollars, talk of a national playoff. So Jeff and I felt that the timing was right to take a real big picture look at a sport that was riding this wild wave of popularity.
And of course, you're both excellent reporters, and your bailiwick is as an investigative reporter for Sports Illustrated, for ABC News, for CBS Sports and CBS News. And when people think about investigative reporting, really, Armen, as you well know, it's almost like they're looking for scalps to be nailed to the wall. Major violations and probations, guys getting fired left and right. And it doesn't seem that was quite the mission of this book. How would you explain to people exactly what Armen Keteyian, the investigative reporter, was trying to illuminate?
That's a good question. I think, both Jeff and I had written so-called exposés in the past. I did one on University of Nebraska football program. I did one on the NBA called Money Players. Alexander Wolf and I did one, I guess you could say, on the state of college basketball recruiting and raw recruits, though this book is much closer to raw recruits than anything I've ever done before. I think investigative journalism is just damn good reporting. I don't think there's any magic wand that you wave. I've learned the value of public record. I know how to find documents. I know where to look. I've built up what I like to think is a certain level of credibility over the years with the people I've worked with. So in this case, I brought everything I have to bear into this, which I consider to be the most ambitious project I've ever worked on. Talking to people like Nick Saban and getting access to that Alabama program is anything but easy. And in fact, quickly, when I wrote a letter down there originally, I got a response back from Jeff Puritan, who is the keeper of all things Nick Saban down there. And he said, Armen, Nick's not going to allow you to profile the smallest or one of the lower assistants. He just doesn't do that. And I said, well, just send him the email, give him the email. And about a week later, Jeff called me back and he goes, I don't know what you have on Nick, but he's going to do this. And I said, Jeff, what I have on Nick is his trust, because I had done a piece on him for the NFL Today back in 2005 in his first year with the Dolphins. He didn't want to do it. Harvey Green, who was the PR person down there, said, you know what, this is one guy you can trust. Let him do it. And I did it. He really liked it. And Nick remembered it. And the other thing, and Nick is really close to Bill Belichick. And I think I've earned Bill's respect over the years after covering the NFL for 8 years. And so, Seth, that's how these doors, this is how these doors get open. It's a very simple formula to me. Trust equals access equals information and equals perspective. And Jeff and I played a lot of chips in order to ask for the kind of access that we ended up getting. But, once you get it, you kind of have to know what to do with it too.
One of the ways that I would explain the book to people, Armen, I don't know if readers and viewers are familiar with the term TikTok as a story in journalism, where you take an event that's already taken place, where people kind of know the broad outlines, and then you go back in and report it and give the minute by minute TikTok narrative, which is fascinating reading. And the one chapter that really sticks out for me in that regard, and I know that your partner Jeff was the sort of the point guy in this, that was the firing of Mike Leach at Texas Tech. We all know the story and the battles with Craig James and Adam James. To hear and read the minute by minute narrative was fascinating, and nobody comes out real well in this. Mike Leach's behavior certainly was far from exemplary. We all know about Craig James and how ultra supportive, to be charitable, he was for his son. But I got to tell you, the number one takeaway that I had from that chapter was I was very impressed with the administration at Texas Tech. They got this information. They ferreted out what happened. They tried to hold this very popular, very successful coach accountable. All he had to do is basically sign a letter, according to your reporting, apologizing or recognizing that what he did was inappropriate. And when he refused to sign that letter, they fired him. I was real impressed by that. What do you think?
Absolutely. I think one of the beauties of the book is that you hear from so many people who were on the inside of events that you think you know about. The Texas Tech chapter was a fabulous piece of reporting by Jeff. I mean, he called me up once, Seth, and he said, a couple of times, you're not going to believe who's going to talk to us. And by that time, I had sort of been, I knew what was coming. And I said, well, who? And he goes, well, Craig James. I'm like, wow, he's never talked to anybody before. And then he called up and he said, you're never going to believe who's going to talk to me now. And I'm like, okay, who? He said, the judge in the case. We're actually going to get inside the judge's chambers as they're arguing over the temporary restraining order, whether Mike Leach would be allowed to coach at the Alamo Bowl or not. I mean, that's the kind of David Halberstam-ish kind of reporting that I think has been missing in a lot of sports journalism of late. Not that there isn't a lot of great sports journalism out there, but I think the depth of the reporting here and the inside out view, and one of the things that you said, it was really important to me is there's ambiguity here. There's not a lot of black and white at times. There's a lot of gray in college football. And I think one of the really beautiful parts of the book is that we don't take and offer opinions in a lot of places. We let the events unfold in real time with the people that are experiencing them, and that let you make a decision as the reader as to what you think is happening right now in this component part of college football. And it was really important for Jeff and I, as we were looking at this book. I always saw the system as a machine, almost like a matrix-like machine, that all these different component parts going on behind the scenes that the average fan doesn't see, rarely sees. They see it on television or they see it in the stadium. What we wanted to do was kind of pull that curtain back and say, look, here's all the parts of the system. Here's how they operate. Here's how they can raise somebody up to great heights. And here's how you can get chewed up and spit out by the system. And you can get dragged under a bus by the system, or you can get caught up in the system. And that's each chapter in its own way gives you, I think, very unusual and rare insight into that part of the system. And the sum of the parts, I think, that is what's making, the book so popular right now.